Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to take a look at the moon in the sign of Libra. This is the next episode in my Planets in Profile series where I take each of the planets through all 12 of the signs. In this series dedicated to the moon, we've been going through all of the signs and we're now at Libra. So today we're going to take a deeper look at the moon in the sign of Libra and its meaning. I hope that you will find this useful. This has been a fun series, and I try to catch up on it here or there where there are small breaks in the weekly action. So yeah, I hope that you'll enjoy this. Before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. We're seeing if we can get to 100,000 subscribers on this channel within a year. We're on our way, but it does help every day when we get new subscribers of people who watch regularly, maybe who aren't yet subscribed, as well as dropping us a comment and the thumbs up really does help us grow. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. When you are over there, the main promotion for today is that our first ever immersive training retreat is taking place in Mexico next June of 2026. Go to the events page, click on Immersive Retreat. You could also find the Oracle within listed under the courses page. Once you are there, you'll see everything the retreat includes, the different pricing options. Early bird pricing for the retreat is open. The retreat is filling up very quickly. So we are already about a third of the way full after the first week of registration. So we're probably going to fill up by the early bird deadline, which is early October. I would highly recommend, if you're thinking of coming on this retreat, to register soon to make sure you guarantee a spot on this trip. So you can check out everything this retreat includes. There's an informational video at the end of today's post that I've tagged on to tell you more about the retreat, who it is, who is an ideal candidate to go on this retreat in terms of your astrological background, what the retreat is focused on, how to register, all that good stuff. So watch for that after I sign off on today's episode. All right, well, on that note, I am excited to talk about the moon in Libra, taking the next step in our Moon Through the Zodiac series here. I'm going to put this presentation up on the screen, and we are going to go ahead and get into this. So what I like to do in my Planets in Profile series is try to give you the building blocks to create the delineations as ancient astrologers did. That means giving you an understanding rather than just a list. A list of significations is not very meaningful if we don't understand how we got there. So, to understand any planet in any sign whatsoever, we have to start by understanding the nature of the planet first. Sometimes in modern astrology, we overemphasize zodiac signs and we forget that it is the planets who are the players. The signs are more like environments that the planets find themselves in. And so starting with a planet in ancient astrology is fundamental to the way that delineations are crafted. This means when we're taking the moon through the zodiac, in any sign, the delineation starts by understanding the moon. So the moon's universal significations, these are going to be the broadest philosophical meanings that live somehow at the archetypal core or center of the moon as a symbol in astrology. And these universal philosophical meanings tend to have the broadest symbolic application in a birth chart or a reading. On the universal level, for example, the moon represents the realm of fortune. The moon was literally called fortune. And that word fortune shares a lot in common, for example, with the Indian idea of karma. That is, that the world is a constantly fluctuating soup of material energies that are moving, ebbing, flowing in accordance with mysterious laws of the physical material universe, but also through the choices that we make as we interact with these material energies and laws. And therefore, there is a mysterious equation going on all the time between our choices and the way they interact with the material laws of nature to create outcomes and circumstances. Circumstantial change and fluctuation is often deeply mysterious. Ancient astrologers were not simplistic in the way that they thought about things like karma, fate, destiny, fortune. But the reason that the moon is associated with the realm of fortune is that when you look at the moon as an object in the sky, as a living symbol in nature, its most obvious characteristic is its changeability. Its face is always changing. It moves more quickly than any other planets. Its latitude varies the most quickly compared to any other planet. It is the living emblem of change and fluctuation. Not only that, but the moon's face is a reflective light, not an original light. And this world was thought to be a kind of emanation from a divine archetypal eternal realm. Like in a Platonic sense, the realm of the triangle becomes real and manifest in material forms here, but in that sense is a kind of reflection or like a hologram of a higher abstract form or image in the mind of the universe. So the moon represents the material manifest universe, which is a reflection of these divine but somewhat abstract forms. We call them archetypes. So the moon represents this cauldron of constantly changing material energies and circumstances that we experience in the mind, the body, the environment, the world around us. And in that level, she was thought of as the administrator of the daily fluctuations of fortune, fate, circumstance, or karma. Now, that's the universal starting point for the moon. By contrast, the moon's topical significations are those that represent the most specific people, places, or things. So we go from the universal and the philosophical down to a more concrete level. So, for example, the moon represents the body. Why? Because the body is the living, reflective temple of the spirit soul. The body is, in a sense, the moon to the sun. If the sun is that spark of eternal consciousness that inhabits the form of the body, then the body is the reflective medium in and through which the spirit lives. Similarly, mothers as the midwife of creation, the carrier of the seed, and the one that creates the gestation and the shape and the form through which the seed comes and is made manifest. Mothers are therefore connected with the moon in the same way that the moon is connected with the material universe itself, as a manifestation of something archetypal and relatively more abstract in the same way that a seed is. So women in general, the yin or the feminine, you could call it energetically, home and family, ancestry, tribe, village, clan, culture, all things that connect us in an ecology of living relationships that are embodied and diverse. If you think about the moon in metaphysical terms, the sun is like the one and the moon is the many. So any way in which we find a sense of identity or quote unquote oneness that's rooted in manyness rather than oneness would ironically be lunar. So home, family, ancestry, tribe, village, clan, and culture are places that we find unity or a kind of oneness, but it's rooted in diversity. It's rooted in the diversity of people, places, villages, families, constellations, or groups. So the moon represents groups in a sort of general sense. The moon can represent marriage, pregnancy, childbirth, but anything that we nurture or devote ourselves to, and things as basic as food and cooking. So this is just a little crash course in the universal and topical significations of the moon. The significations of the moon are then modified according to whatever sign the moon is traveling through at any given time, or let's say at the time of birth in a natal chart. The meaning of a sign is going to be primarily related to its host. Its host, its planetary host, or what we sometimes call a ruler, is assigned according to a very intelligent mapping of the alternation of light and dark in the solar year as relatively oriented through the northern hemisphere. So that means that a sign is a place, a stage within the unfolding of the alternation of light and dark that constitutes the solar year. The planets that host that sign are affiliated with that stage of light and dark alternation. And in turn, a planet in a sign becomes associated with all of that. So when we talk about the moon in Libra, for example, we are going to be talking about Libra in the masculine air temple of Venus, a tropical cardinal sign that is also the exaltation of Saturn. So let's put that all together. Libra is cardinal or tropical, meaning it constitutes one of the 4 major turning points of the solar year, where we enter in the sign of Libra through the fall equinox into the dark half of the year. And so light and dark achieve harmony and balance through this sign. This is a yang sign. So there's a typo there. It should say yang, which means it's masculine or bright and sort of assertive energetically, or archetypally. And then it's airy, and the element of air has its own set of meanings. Now, we can't get so deep into each of these, but in addition to the fact that this is the temple of Venus and the exaltation of Saturn, it is also a tropical turning point in the solar year that balances light with dark, that enters us into the dark half of the year. It's a masculine air sign. Air signs were called human frequently because you have in Gemini, in Aquarius, human figures in the constellations associated. And in Libra, you have a man-made object in the scales, or the balance. And so the air signs are associated with the rational intelligence of human beings, and something about human beings that's very special compared to other animals, which we are thought of as an animal by ancient astrologers, but we have rational capacities, and that special quality of our thinking, our way of perceiving. Not that it necessarily makes us better than anyone or anything else. I don't think that's the message here, but it's that we have this special, unique, rational, self-reflective capacity. And it changes how we think, how we communicate, how we see ourselves in nature and in the cosmos. In this sign of the balance, the first sign of zodiacal autumn or fall, this is when the dark takes over from the light. The sun has entered the metaphorical underworld of the solar year, as seen from the symbolic standpoint of the Northern Hemisphere. This is not a causal system, it's a symbolic divinatory language, so the orientation being relative doesn't matter. You don't need to flip the zodiac for your hemisphere. But this detail is important. The moon in Libra, well, what I should say about this time of year, and one of the reasons that we assign both Saturn and Venus. First of all, when we think about this sign, we think about a balancing point between the light and dark qualities of the solar year itself. And so harmonization between light and dark and an achievement of balance is a hallmark of this sign in terms of the light and dark qualities of the year, which is why Venus is in part given to this sign, because Venus is a planet associated with harmony and balance and flow and exchange. Interrelating and balancing is a Venusian kind of thing. So this is one of Venus's signs. It has different logic in the sign of Taurus, its other sign, its feminine sign, but this is one of the reasons. Saturn being exalted here has to do with the fact that we're entering the dark half of the year. And Saturn is a planet associated with winter, death, endings, decay, old age, impermanence, and the wisdom that comes from that side of things as well. The perspective offered by our mortality, the perspective offered by pain and limitation and suffering. There's a rich sense of humor and wisdom that Saturn carries, and a social sophistication that comes with having seen and experienced many things. So the exaltation of Saturn in Libra also has to do with the quality of light and dark. Now, when we think about the moon in Libra, we are therefore thinking about a moon that has to be moon-like, but be so in a way that reflects the qualities of Venus, Saturn in the sign of the equality of light and dark, entering into the dark half of the year, airy, rational, etc. So this moon in Libra, you could say, is a Venus-Saturn kind of moon, airy, yang, and cardinal or tropical. So the ways that we typically see this come across in terms of characteristics of behavior, personality, themes that we see in human life. Remember, this is an air sign, so many of its themes come across in human social exchanges. The moon in Libra has charm and sophistication socially. It's a Venus ruled sign. Venus can be very charming and very poised. Socially graceful, understanding things like etiquette and the appropriate time to say something or step back and let someone else say something. Very socially graceful. Aesthetic and tasteful. There's a refined sense of the play of light and dark. One of my favorite things that I've always noticed about many of my Libran clients, students, friends, there's often a love for black and white, like really graceful, beautiful black and white photography. And one of the things about black and white photography is that it can capture something beautiful, but give it this aura of darkness. That the beauty and sensibility is somehow captured by the darkness of black and white photography has always struck me as a thing totally in line with my Libran friends who love that kind of photography. And I'm not trying to make an overgeneralization. It's just something I've noticed. Aesthetic and tasteful, but in a way that appreciates the play of light and dark. Diplomatic and measured. There's an understanding of egos that have things at stake and a real measured approach, like someone who has an understanding of the kind of social algebra or calculus that exists behind and within things that are happening. Relational and responsive, people who perceive themselves as embedded in meaningful relationships, sometimes to the detriment of feeling like you're an individual, sometimes to the detriment of your own feelings, desires, or the need to be assertive. Polite, civil, and balanced. Again, any of these things could be to a fault. Polite, civil, and balanced, though, is just with an eye for every situation being an opportunity to balance different elements that are present in life, energetically, intellectually, emotionally. People, especially with the moon in Libra, are often very just gifted when it comes to the careful balancing of emotional qualities taking place in a space or a relationship. Will often make really good therapists or people who can work in PR or marketing. Now, another shadow side might be the tendency to be indecisive or people pleasing, because if you are sort of, if you're pushed around by that social sensibility, it could lead to indecision or people pleasing, where the social calculus becomes debilitating. Conflict averse but justice oriented can also be a tricky balance. Mars is in its exile in this sign, which means that there's a strong concern for balance, fairness, equality, justice, and beauty. But because there's also a tendency for, to privilege harmony over conflict, sometimes the conflict aversion makes it difficult to achieve actual change or to assert actual desires. Generally, the moon in Libra is oriented towards symmetry, beauty, and fairness of form, of body, of bodily, sensual reality, because the moon is such an embodied planet. Constellating around experiences of justice and injustice, connection versus separation, harmony versus dissonance, and outward appearances and how we judge and calculate them versus what is authentic within that may not always fit neatly into the social calculus. These are tensions that will often come up, especially in and through the body, emotions, environment, family, social class, culture, because of the moon's connection to those topics. All right, what I want to do next is get into just a few examples of people, famous people, historical people, celebrities who were born with the moon in the sign of Libra. And I'm going to comment on these individuals from the standpoint of knowing a little about them, but not necessarily a lot. So these are impressions that to me just drive home some of the obvious qualities of the planet in the sign. And I'll say a few things about what I've noticed in the lives of clients and friends and family that I know who have the moon in Libra as well. So the first one that I found that I found a lot, right? When I do my research for this, I might find 40 people with the moon in Libra and try to whittle it down to a list of those that I can actually talk about because I know something about them, So the first one is William Shakespeare. And if he was masterful at anything, it was the sensibility that he had in portraying the intricate, subtle dynamics of human relationships and of various moral dilemmas that human beings find themselves in, the balance between things like love and duty and justice. And he was incredibly poetic. And he was a social commentator of his times. His artwork, people think of it now as maybe not so much because we weren't embedded in the time and place and circumstances that he was living in, but much of his artwork was not so subtly disguised social commentary. But also, it had that timeless quality of capturing human experience, regardless of time, place, and circumstance, which is why he's still read today. So, and is thought of as such a profound artist. So I think he represents the moon in Libra quite nicely. Now, Sting is the next one that I found. And first of all, his entire career has a lot of social consciousness behind it. I worked with people who worked with him when I was writing for Reality Sandwich at the beginning of my career, and had many people share with me that his concern for social justice and human fairness, cross-cultural harmony, his interest in being a musician and something of an ambassador for cross-cultural artistic sensibilities and relationships. He has a deep, rich appreciation from music, art, and culture from all over the planet, and has been someone, from that early kind of 60s, 70s era of rock and roll and its appearance on the scene. But he has been someone who's been known for example, blending rather seamlessly elements of Eastern Asian mysticism and art and music with Persian or Arabian historical influences in art and music. So I think that in addition to his very graceful and sort of classy, jazzy presence, it just makes so much sense that he has Sun, Saturn, Neptune, and the moon in Libra, by the way. But anyway, I think he's a pretty good representative of someone, someone very Libran. So anyway, play with these too, because there's things you may know about them that I do not. Walt Disney is an interesting one because insofar as the moon in Libra has strong concern with ideal forms of beauty, which is a Saturn-Venus combination in Libra. The Saturn-Venus combination in Libra will often lead Librans to have a very refined sense of what is ideal or perfect or preferable on the level of art, culture, etiquette, etc. So he was obviously an idealist, and he had this vision of art and family and magic bringing people together. Now, say what you will about the empire that he's created, which, we could all discuss. I like that one of the things that I read about him is that his view was that art and magic could bring diverse families from all across the country together. And, again, say what you will, but a lot of that has actually happened. I think of my when I was a kid, Disney was something that like all kids, like could relate to. Disney films, Disney stories, fairy tales, Magic Kingdom, blah, blah, blah. To the extent that even though I find Disney World sort of like repulsive, I've taken my kids there, because it's a cultural experience of myth, magic, fairy tale, legend, that it has this unifying presence in our culture. It's complicated by things like materialism, and we could talk at length about, for example, his fall in Jupiter in Capricorn, which is square to his moon. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. I don't ever like to aggrandize anyone, and we're all complex people, but I also like to take what I think represents an archetype and see if we can draw it out. All right, the next one on my list, the next two are complicated figures socially. This is Jordan Peterson. Now, I will admit that when it comes to Jordan Peterson's, some of his work on fairy tales, Disney movies, and the Bible, I have found interesting. I am less interested in him, as a political commentator. So I'll just put it that way. I have this ability that maybe it's a flaw. I don't know, but I have a tendency to collect things that I like from people and have no problem setting aside the things that I don't. I don't know. Maybe it's by Mars and Gemini that I just go, that part is interesting. I don't really like that part. But I think, it would be understandable if someone would be like, have stronger yeses and nos. You either are fully on board with someone or not. maybe this is due to the fact that I have 3 planets in Libra in my chart, and I go, oh, I like this, but not that part, and I can let some of these tensions coexist. The reason that I think that Jordan Peterson is a good moon in Libra, description of moon in Libra is very good for his chart, I mean, is that he is constantly talking about social order, ethics. He's talked a lot about human sexuality, and he has this constant driving concern for social critique and commentary that is quite common for Moon and Libra folks, to be embedded in the social reality, the civic reality, and to be constantly discussing moral, social implications and orderings is very common, whether I agree with him or not, right? And again, I don't really tend to take in his content on that level, but I find him interesting as a Jungian who speaks to things like archetypes in the Bible. I've found those parts interesting. So anyway, I think as someone who's like a constant social commentator, social philosopher, you could say, again, whether you agree with him or not, he's he's representing that pretty well. Not to mention he has a grand air trine with Mercury and Saturn in Gemini and Aquarius that lends itself to some of that stuff as well. But anyway, the next one, very similar person in some ways actually, is Joe Rogan. I believe that he's been on his podcast a number of times. Now, for many years, I actually really liked the Joe Rogan podcast. I sort of started not liking it as much. Maybe the past few years, it just isn't as much of an interest for me now. Although occasionally I'll find myself tuning into episodes that I'm really interested by. Recently, I watched an interview he did with Bernie Sanders that I thought was really, really fascinating. And one of the reasons that if I watch his show, I will watch it, is because I'm interested to hear what the guest has to say typically. And I like how, as an interviewer, he has this ability to draw out contrasting viewpoints. And he does a really good job with that, in my humble opinion. Obviously, I think probably in the past couple of years, I think people have noticed that his own biases and his own agendas have been more front and center. But over the years, one of the things that I always really appreciated about him when I was listening was that he would bring such care and tact and consideration for contrasting views on situations. He has such a kind of skeptical, careful, but very thoughtful way of interviewing people. So he's a good bridge builder between contrasting viewpoints through conversation, and has this way of understanding human, civic, social experience that I think is very broad-minded in its own way, which is a hallmark of a moon in Libra. And again, that doesn't mean there aren't problems, or that I'm suggesting that he's the most likable or sympathetic character in the world. But there it is, Joe Rogan with the moon in Libra. Ariana Grande is the next one on my list. Now, I don't know much about Ariana Grande, but my daughters like some of the music, and so I'm like, okay. She has such an ability to project beauty and charm, and is such a romantic storyteller. And this, by the way, the rectified chart that I found, which for some reason is not represented on the screen, the rectified chart that I found had moon in Libra. So this you're seeing on this chart is, which I think must have been a different chart that my assistant accidentally put in. She has the sorry guys, I had a accidental glitch on my computer. So anyway, the chart that I got, which is an A-rated chart from Astro Data Bank, has her as a moon in Libra, and I don't even think it's rectified. I think it's coming from a birth time. So anyway, this chart that you're looking at is inaccurate from the standpoint of the position of the moon. And I believe that she's also a Capricorn rising. So this chart that you're looking at is off. And just for reference, the data that I have is Boca Raton, Florida, June 26, 1993, 9:16 p.m., A-rated chart on astro.com. So A is pretty good. So anyway, just to reflect that back, because I just saw that and I go, oh, I didn't see that. That's a mistake in our slide. Anyhow, again, if I had to kind of talk about her as an artist, she has this very polished, very refined presentation, and a real kind of romantic sensibility and storytelling capacity in her artwork. So it struck me as a very like socially classy, artistic, social romantic kind of quality in her music. Now, again, I'm including her because I was looking for some women to include, and I didn't know a lot of these women that were showing up with Moon in Libra. So I just found one that I knew a little bit about through my kids. But anyway, uh, Malala Yousafzai. I'm sure I'm not saying that name correctly, but she's an activist for an advocate or activist for uh, young women's education, and she has been a kind of globally recognized activist on behalf of girls and women and education. And this idea of her as someone who is trying to fight for things that are morally just in the name of women strikes me not only as the moon in Libra, but she has the moon conjoined Mars in Libra. So that kind of fighter for the rights and fairness around women and girls and education. That's such a neat signature that so closely mirrors her life's work. And then finally, Maya Angelou, who I read some of in graduate school, and just she's a fantastic writer. But I was a teacher too. But I would say that throughout all of her work is a concern for equity, moral justice, human connection, human goodness, peace, tolerance, equanimity, fairness. So she's an artist who is an activist. That's how I would think of Maya Angelou. Artist as activist, artist as social commentator, strong feature of her life's work. And probably what people recognize and love about her most is the way that she was morally persuasive while also being an artistic, genius. She has Mercury and Venus conjoined in Pisces, by the way. Venus being the ruler of the moon conjoined with Mercury in Pisces speaks to that social concern with justice and fairness that's infused into the poetic, beautiful artwork of her writing. So the moon in Libra hosted by Venus and Mercury just totally, captures the spirit of Maya Angelou, in my opinion. Anyway, it's always, for me, I always feel a little like it's a little challenging to bring up examples of people historically that illustrate archetypes when you know that some people are gonna like, oh, I hate that person, or I like, for me personally, I can't like, oh, I love that person or I hate that person. I'm either like, oh, I am interested in that, or I'm not so interested. But for some reason, I just don't get into the black or white thinking about people. And I'm able to usually, maybe it's the like 3 planets in Libra in my own chart, that I tend to pull out things that I find are beautiful or interesting and just leave those that I disagree with or that I don't like as much. So whenever I do these exercises, I invite you to try that on for size if any of the people coming up are, more or less triggering for you than others. Anyway, all that being said, I hope that you enjoyed this Moon in Profile episode. We'll be on to Scorpio next, which should be nice and spicy. After I sign off, there's an informational video about the upcoming retreat. I hope you'll check it out and come join us next June. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm really excited to tell you more about the Oracle Within, the retreat that we'll be hosting in Mexico in June of 2026. So this is a little informational video that I've made to answer all the questions that you might have about the retreat. In this video, I'm going to start by telling you more about what you will learn on the retreat, what the focus of our studies will be. And then I'm going to tell you about our daily format and sort of what day-to-day life will look like at this retreat center outside of the actual material we'll be studying. I'm going to then tell you who this retreat is ideal for, what kind of background you may want to have before coming along. And then finally, I'm going to tell you more about how you can register. And of course, I'll take you over to the actual retreat website page so that you know where all of the information is located. There's also a really rich FAQ section that will probably answer any further questions you may have. On that note, let's start with what will I learn? So for a very long time, astrologers have talked about what astrology is. What is this? Is it some kind of karmic science? Is it a science of causal energies and influences? Is this actually scientific? Like, what order of knowing is astrology? If we say we can know something about reality, then how can we actually say that when it comes to astrology? These may seem like really deep, dense philosophical issues, but actually, they're at the heart of what it means to really deepen into astrology, to have an understanding of what this actually is so fundamental and so helpful. Throughout all of the programs that I teach at Nightlight, I, of course, talk at length about my belief that astrology is a form of divination, that this is a language of signs and omens, very much like the tarot or the I Ching or many other systems of symbolic divination from all around the planet. We're going to spend a lot of time on this retreat talking about what astrology is. From a historical and philosophical perspective, what is divination? What is divination, not just in this tradition, but all over the planet? What kind of things does a divinatory view of the cosmos assume about the nature of reality, about the nature of the soul, and what we're actually doing as practitioners when we practice astrology or when we study it or when we use it for ourselves? So, one of the teachers that I had that made a huge impact on me, and 12 years ago when Jupiter was last in Cancer, I hosted him for a retreat on astrology as a form of divination, is Jeffrey Cornelius. He wrote this book called The Moment of Astrology: Origins in Divination, which is, in my opinion, one of the best books on astrology ever written. This will be something like a preparatory textbook that a lot of students on the retreat I'll recommend read before you come to this course. Over the program for the course of a full week, in the mornings, we're going to be talking about the history, the metaphysics, the philosophy, the ancient mystics, and what they said about the nature of astrology itself. So we're going to think really deeply about what is astrology. Then in the afternoons, we're going to talk about how to connect with an oracle. Connecting with an oracle, connecting with astrology as a divinatory system, in other words, is about the marriage of intuition and being able to listen to the oracle speak while also utilizing the logic of craft. How do you marry those two things together? It's not something we take a lot of deliberate time to talk about as astrologers. So in the mornings, we're talking about history, philosophy, theory of astrology. In the afternoons, we're going to be talking about how to actually develop a living, vibrant relationship with an oracle so that it's informing how you approach the craft of a reading or how you approach the craft of astrology itself, if it's something that you maybe just use only for you in your own spiritual path. Either way, practitioners, hobby students are all welcome. So a lot of hands-on immersive work with charts, with live clients, with different systems of divination, and talking a lot about how to connect with an oracle experientially in our afternoons, where our mornings will be devoted to theory. It's about 30 to 40 hours worth of content that we'll be doing over the course of a week together, which means this is effectively like one of my advanced training programs condensed into a week. It's brand new material, brand new curriculum, doesn't appear anywhere else in the Nightlight programs, and yet everything that this program includes is really a condensation of the underlying philosophy of astrology itself that is a part of all of the Nightlight programs and all of my work as a whole. And again, most of that was deeply inspired by the work of Jeffrey Cornelius, who's I consider him something of a mentor in my life. So that's a bit about what you will learn. If you have questions about what you will learn, you can feel free to email me for more details, info@nightlightastrology.com. Now, I want to talk about the format of the retreat. When you're on this retreat, first of all, you're in a beautiful sort of jungle beach location near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, for a week, which means we every day will not just be about theory and experiential, immersive, oracular work, which I'm very excited about. I have a ton of really good curriculum written for us as a group to go through, but in the mornings, we're going to have the option of starting your morning with breath work, yoga, meditation. In the evenings, we'll probably cap our days off with a little bit of centering as well. So my wife, Ashley, who I ran a yoga studio with for a decade, will be with me leading daily meditation and yoga. She is an incredibly good yoga teacher, very grounded and very, wherever your level is at, there'll be something there for you. And that's optional as well. So every day you have a little meditation and yoga. There's healthy food that serves people if you're vegan, vegetarian, or eat meat or whatever. There's options for food. There's a beach. There's a pool. There's some jungle hikes available. So our days will be broken into periods of free time, periods of rest, and periods of focused learning with things like meditation and yoga as options that are there for everyone. We'll also have some other meaningful group exercises that we'll do that will be, again, about how do you connect with an oracle? How do you make a conversation with the oracle a daily part of your life? So that's something of the format that you can look forward to in this beautiful kind of oceanside retreat setting. More information on the website. I'll show you that in a second. Who is this for? Ideally, you are someone who has a background in traditional Hellenistic astrology already. Wherever that comes from, if it's my courses or not, I want people coming to this retreat to have some pretty good solid background in Hellenistic astrology already. Or if you're from within our programs, then as long as you are enrolled in the year one program, you don't have to have finished it. You just need to be at least enrolled in it. Then you would be more than welcome. Any alumni from any of our programs would be welcome. And again, people who have some serious background in traditional astrology already, just because I don't want people to come along with maybe a modern background, but zero understanding of Hellenistic. So that would be who I would recommend this for. Spaces are limited and we anticipate the retreat will fill up rather quickly. So I really recommend registering as soon as you can. You also have the early bird rates to help you save. Finally, how do I register? I'm going to take you over to the website and you will find that here, the website, you can find it under the events page. Go to Immersive Retreat, or under the courses, it's our new course called The Oracle Within. When you scroll down, you're going to see everything that the program includes, basically everything I've gone over, maybe a little bit more details and depth there, as well as a little personal note for me that I wrote about why this means so much to me. You'll learn more about Mar de Jade, which is the beautiful retreat center. You can check it out. You're going to book through us. So you don't book through the retreat center, you book through us, and then we take care of it. At the bottom, you're going to find registration options that will be available starting on August 11th. That's today. Right now, as I'm looking at this, we don't have the prices listed yet. It's still kind of under construction. But at the bottom, you'll find different available options for registering. The different options will include different room options, and there's different. So if you want a private room versus maybe sharing a room with someone we'll assign you with that's part of the group, or maybe even a small group dorm room where there's like 5 people are sharing a room and you're comfortable being with other students on the trip, stuff like that. So there'll be some options there for everyone. There's an early bird rate that'll be in effect until October, saves you a little bit of money off the cost. And then also all of the different room options that are available at different price tiers depending on and they go first come first serve in terms of, like, so there's some ocean view rooms. The people who book first will get the best. We just go best available first and just run it like that. So anyway, again, as you are looking over anything on the page, you have any questions, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. I hope that this has been helpful. I can't wait to have finally an immersive in-person training program in a beautiful location. It's nice to do things online, but I really love having in-person time available. And I know that you're going to also really enjoy working with Ashley during the evenings throughout the week. Ashley will also have some little workshops that she'll be offering as options for people that are part of your retreat package that will be on plant spirit medicine topics and how to use different plant teachers to work with different astrological signatures in the chart. You got a difficult Mars, work with this plant. You got a challenged Venus, try this plant. So there's going to be some really fun little add-ons around plant spirit medicine that Ashley, if you know her on my channel, she talks about plants often, will also lead. So anyway, that's it. That's your informational video. I hope that this was useful. Hope to see some of you on the retreat in Mexico next year. Take it easy, everyone.